Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of our podcast series dedicated to women working in the field of sustainability. I'm Tonia Plakhotniuk, and I will be your host today. It's a great pleasure to be joined by two fantastic women, Amelia Tan and Emily Pollock. Amelia is the head of responsible investment strategy for LGIM Investments, focusing on integrating the responsible investment process across the investments team and innovation in product solutions. And Emily is client director at Schroders Capital Solutions, working with clients to build and implement customized private asset portfolios and multi-private asset products. Thank you so much, Amelia and Emily, for joining us today. And without further ado, let's start by learning more about your background. So can you tell us about your personal journey and how you found your way into the field of sustainability? And maybe Amelia, starting from you.
Sure. Thanks, Tonia, and thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really honored to be part of this. So I decided to take some time out of my career just around after the global financial crisis, and I, did a postgraduate. And it was a good time to reflect, I think, on what I wanted out of my career. I think the GFC was, it left quite a deep impression, I think, and it kind of challenged me because I thought, and I had always believed that finance can and should be a force for good. So I thought, well, what can I do, I suppose, that ensures that that's, the case for my career? And I decided that long-term sort of wealth generation was probably what I should focus on. So I turned to asset management, and I learned the ropes through product development and strategy. And sometime around 2015, I came across this concept of sustainable investing. And I thought, what an amazing thing. And I decided that was how I could really contribute to the world's sort of greatest challenges. And so I put my hand up and I became one of the two founding members of the sustainable investing team in London at my firm.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Amelia. So you started with the core asset management and then transitioned into responsible investment and essentially established the team. Oh, that's wonderful. And Emily, what about you?
Yeah, and also, yeah, thanks for having me. It is a real honor and just really fun to have this conversation. So I've spent 20 years on the private asset side, and I've sort of touched all parts of the business across investment, product sales. When I started in sort of the early 2000s, picking up the pieces of the internet bubble, I remember a bunch of these clean tech funds coming through. And they didn't really have a track record. Some of them had lost a lot of money, but at the same time, I was like, yes, there was something about it that I was like, this is a great idea. And it's that intersection of innovation and a force for good, which also really gets me quite lit up. I moved to London in 2012. And right around that time, particularly in private markets, you started to hear a lot more about ESG and ESG integration and different, particularly large, pension funds, the Nordics and some of the Northern Europeans being furthest along in that journey. But it was moving from the US to Europe and that intersection, which also then reignited what I had thought was sort of the early part of my career. And so then joining Schroders 6.5 years ago, Schroders has been a big backer of sustainable investment on both the public and private side, most recently having acquired Blue Orchard, which is an impact manager, means that from where I sit, am able to really work with both public and private investors to build portfolios that can be both sustainable and impactful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. And just staying with you a little bit. So if you could maybe share a bit more about your current role, what is keeping you busy, and so what does your day to day look like, and most importantly, what inspires you and keeps you motivated on a daily basis to keep going?
So Schroders it's a large asset manager. I work within Schroders Capital, and Schroders Capital is the $100 billion business just focused on private markets. So that's private equity, infrastructure, real estate, private debt, and credit alternatives. I founded the private asset solutions business. And in that business, we are working with our largest clients to design portfolios which are incorporating multiple different asset classes. And so, what that means in practice is it will be some of our largest investors who might seed a fund, or we might create a mandate, and we can be really outcome focused. So, we can look at risk, return, liquidity parameters, and then sustainability metrics. And so, with that, working with investors that will have core values that they want to target, will have impact themes. And it ranges from they know exactly which SDGs they want to target and the KPIs that they want measured, to being an organization which is, say, a supermarket chain and really needs to think about food systems. And so with that, then helping them narrow down what is the investable universe, how can you create the most impact, and really going from soup to nuts, from an idea all the way then through implementation. And within private markets, given the long investment horizon, many times, even just one project will take sort of 3 years to get off the ground. But then that is also then laying the groundwork for what will be a dynamic portfolio over the next 20 years.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. So you're really into the weeds of, helping companies with their sustainability journeys as well, because, we recognize the role of investors, and I think even more nuanced role of investors in private markets, where the engagement with companies can be incredibly helpful and powerful. And Amelia, what about you? So what does your day-to-day look like, and what inspires you?
Sure. So in 2022, I joined Legal and General Investment Management, which is the largest asset manager in the UK. My role as head of responsible investment strategy is to work with the investment teams on how they would be integrating responsible investing insights into their investment processes, as well as what are products and solutions that we offer to our clients. This is primarily focused around public markets, which is slightly different to what Emily does. On a day-to-day basis, I would say there are 3 aspects to the role. The first is what I would call strategy. So it's really around the top-down strategy of how we integrate ESG and specific sustainability insights into different asset classes and investment styles across active, index, multi-asset, liquidity, etc. What our product proposition looks like, how do we determine the range of offerings that we have, but also the quality of offerings, how do we really demonstrate that these are credible from a sustainability perspective. The second sort of functional area I would call thought leadership. So it's really about equipping investment teams on how they could consider these sustainability insights. And ultimately, that really means that they will need to understand the linkages between sustainability and business value. And finding the ways in which these are linked will help them then therefore think about these when they are investing on behalf of our clients. So that's a critical part, I think, of really equipping our investment teams. And then the third piece I would say is around infrastructure. So this is the data, the technology, the operations, and ensuring ultimately that these are positioned so that they can enable our investment teams to actually incorporate these decisions. I would say on the face of it, it would look like I don't have any direct impact on real world outcomes. So I don't allocate capital directly to the most impactful businesses or projects, for example. So what I take inspiration from and what motivates me is actually sort of the systems level work that and outcomes that I think my work produces, which is ultimately knowing that enabling and ensuring investment teams to take these considerations into account when they make these investment decisions That's number one, expanding our product proposition towards sustainable investing and channeling investors' private savings to these outcomes. I believe that these areas and the way in which we do that enables me to at least amplify the impact that I have on the broader ecosystem. And I think working with over £1 trillion worth of assets really does make a difference, and that's what inspires me.
Absolutely, Amelia, and definitely even being able to navigate the sustainability ecosystem and keep up with all the developments and trying to educate your colleagues internally and give them the tools and capabilities so that they can do their job well and integrate sustainability well, in your case, into investment processes. It's a massive role to have, honestly. And actually within that, I mean, considering the breadth and the coverage they have, you have, if you could maybe share an example of an initiative or work stream or deliverable that you've been particularly excited about or passionate about, and what hurdles did you have to overcome when dealing with that initiative project?
So one of the innovations that I'm really excited about that LGIM has developed, I think can really make a difference. And to me, that's so critical. Ultimately, it's what we call the climate action strategy, which is to really target laggards and companies that aren't doing well and aren't doing enough on climate change. And through targeted engagement, working with these companies to unlock shareholder value by accelerating their transition. And I think that is particularly exciting because one is it's not enough, I think, to tell companies that they need to do something. A lot of the time they sort of feel like they're on the stick end of things. And I think, by incentivizing them and telling them and convincing them about the merits of the transition for their bottom line ultimately, and how markets will reward that, I think is a different kind of conversation. It becomes much more of a carrot, right? And I think that's so exciting. And I think that's in many ways game-changing. Two, it's a real step change from sort of traditional climate investing, if I may call that something, which is, like exclusions and avoiding sort of the laggards, right? Or only just investing in the leaders and just forgetting this big in between. And I think this is sort of really a different way of investing. And I believe that it will lead to wholesale evolution in how we approach the issue as a whole. And so for me, that's, again, sort of something that I'm very excited about. Challenges, I think, would be, it's quite tricky because if you think about it, all of us, a lot of our clients, they've all signed the net zero asset owners and asset managers sort of targets, right? And they've got decarbonization plans in place. By investing in these, sort of laggards, you're kind of taking the opposite direction, and you're going to start off with kind of a bad base. And so trying to get them to reconcile their targets with, it's going to look kind of bad in the beginning. I think that's a little bit of a challenge, and trying to convince clients that, having a sleeve that is dedicated to the transition, that is, not an easy journey, and you have to explain it to your end investors. I think that's probably the hardest part of all of this.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Can totally relate to that. Working for a bank as well. I think we all recognize that transition won't be linear, and that engagement with clients is just so pivotal. And as you've said, we cannot just be telling our customers to do something about our targets because we have the targets. I think it's super important to be those trusted advisors to our clients, and again, provide them with tools, guidance, capabilities to make that transition happen. So thank you so much for sharing it. And Emily, what about yourself? Has there been something maybe recently or less so recently that you were particularly passionate about, and what kind of challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so we actually built and launched the first LTAF, which is the long-term asset fund in the UK for Cushion, which you'll be familiar with. But Cushion wanted a sustainable, impactful, climate-focused strategy, and with their seed investment, we were able to launch the first LTAF. So the long-term asset fund is a new regulated fund structure, which has come out in the UK, which is suitable for DC pensions. And one of the things I feel really, really, strongly about is that individual investors and the DC market should have private investment in their portfolios. Long-term investors, they are well suited to this type of investment. And the pension system is one of the greatest catalysts to be able to put significant amount of capital to work, particularly in impactful strategies. So Climate Plus is the strategy that we ended up launching. And this was a multi-private asset climate focused fund across private equity, infrastructure, real estate, and then natural capital. With that, an open-ended impact fund, it had a lot of hurdles. So there were a lot of challenges also for the DC market. But one of the more interesting ones was actually then how do we report on the impact metrics when you're combining different asset classes? Just because you need to be able to report at the fund level, but then it's also important at the asset level. How do you make it digestible, particularly for a DC market? The end member needs to understand what it is they're looking at. So working with our different business units, working with the different investment teams, and then working with the reporting and back office, coming up with reportable metrics. And so that strategy is now a year old, and we just launched our first impact report, which is super, super exciting. And I just hopefully also think where direction of travel is in terms of having more funds which are accessible for either be it retail, be it the DC market, but for too long, particularly in private markets, $10 million minimums. It's large institutions or the ultra high net worth that have been able to access these.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely, thank you, Emily. Yes, thank you, Emily. And speaking of the future, and Emily, again, maybe staying with you a little bit. So how would you see the landscape of sustainability evolving going forward? And what would you like to play in that development or evolution? Is there a specific goal? I mean, you've already alluded to it, I guess, but is there, again, a specific goal or objective or a project that you would like to help pursue or help move forward?
So, for many years watching when I was more on the allocator side, investing in third-party managers, impact strategies would come through, and you'd essentially have to take a haircut if you were investing in an impact strategy versus a normal strategy. Today, I can safely say that the number of impact strategies out there has grown to a sizable mass, and with the quality, that means you don't have to take a haircut. There are fewer deals, and there always will be fewer deals. So it's never going to be, impact is never going to be 100% of anyone's portfolio, but it should be a core allocation. And so that is the message that I try to get across. That is the way I try to build portfolios. Sustainable investing, I think, can be, if not, the rest of the portfolio. And so, as we've watched ESG sort of fall out of the nomenclature, that becomes just part of the risks. When you're thinking about doing a deal, making sure that you are looking after those ES and G risks for the future, that shouldn't even be sort of part of the conversation. But it's that shift to how do we make sure that we are also being really good stewards of capital, being good stewards to the planet, being good stewards to the people, the community. And so it's sort of a different way of thinking about all of investment. And with the projects that I'm working on and the mandates that I build for our clients, it's even just that soft educational piece and walking them through live examples at the company level, at the fund level, and then at their portfolio level, the impact that they can do.
Super, thank you, Emily. No, I can definitely appreciate that. I think even now there are many common misconceptions that sustainable investing, and in particular impact investing, they very much remain niche, and they get confused potentially with some other form of investing, such as philanthropic investing, where people tend to think that themselves as investors that would need to give up on their return. So I do see, as you alluded to, the shift in the future. Maybe that shift will also be accompanied by more awareness raising, education, data, also the data and analysis showing that, well, actually sustainable and impact investing is not something where an investor should sacrifice their investment return. And Amelia, what about you? So how do you see the landscape of sustainability evolving, and what role do you see for yourself there? And is there an initiative that you would like to pursue?
Oh, thank you. So Emily and I have spoken quite a bit about climate, and I think one of these, it's remarkable, and I think it's really great to see the world galvanized around climate change issues and how do we address climate change. I think it is imperative that we build on this approach to climate with a deeper understanding of nature and how it's such a complex interconnectivity, I think, between these two issues. And of course, the relationship with business and therefore our investments is equally, and if not even more complex. I think from my perspective, I want to really focus around how we assess and manage nature-related issues, because, and I think it's also harder, I suppose, because it is so context-specific. And from that perspective, I'm quite pleased, actually. We've been doing quite a bit of sort of reviewing of the landscape of nature-related data. And the good news is that there's quite a lot of development happening between linking sort of what are the assets locations and the companies that are running them, and therefore getting a better understanding of the geospatial sort of related considerations around nature. There's still a long way to go. And I think because of the sort of the nascent nature, I suppose, of the nascent state of nature, I'm about to say nature in multiple ways, that we probably need to combine that with a lot of more fundamental insights, which then relies a lot more on fundamental research and engagement. And this complexity, I think, in terms of that, the nature of the considerations, but also the nature in which the two or more different themes converge, the complexity around the data and the understanding of all of these pieces and factors means you need to be a lot more coordinated as well, I think, between our stewardship activities and our investment teams, really getting a better grip on what are the key themes, what are the key research insights that we need to develop, and then how do we determine what are these engagement targets that we should be focused on. And I think companies will welcome more cohesiveness between sort of investment and stewardship sort of communities, and clearer links, of course, again, to the shareholder value. So ultimately, building this complete understanding of nature will take a lot of time, and maybe will never be complete, but we have to get started, and that's what I would like to focus on.
Perfect. Thank you, Amelia. Now that's definitely a topic that is dear to my heart, and I tend to get excited about, but also sometimes it can be discouraging when you start thinking, okay, where do I start? And when you start analyzing it in a bit more depth, then you realize, oh gosh, this is complicated. This is so interconnected. How do I do it? Where I draw the boundaries? But it is definitely an exciting field. Emily, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, well, and building on that, because one of the more specific themes also that we've been focusing a lot on then is food systems. And I think that, the industrial food complex is so broken, but particularly then where nature and agriculture meet, if we can also help with regenerative farming and have more sustainable agricultural processes, essentially the ecosystem services then help with the nature. And so just being better stewards of land more generally, and then also investing in some of the newer ag tech to be more sustainable and just greener more generally is particularly important and requires a lot of investment. So I think there's both some great investment opportunities, but also some places where you can do real good.
Yes, absolutely. And so within our podcast, we have an interesting tweak to it, as you may know already. So we've had some questions from previous guests. And the first one I wanted to ask maybe yourself, Amelia. So if you had one ask that in your view would make an impactful difference to the speed and scale of environmental and social economic transition, what would that be, and who would you ask?
Sure. So I would ask policymakers to provide a stable, consistent, and purposeful policy environment for the transition that the world really needs. I would ask them to stop scapegoating the climate transition in the face of broader economic and infrastructural challenges, and instead to use the need for this transition as a means to address these challenges. And I think that's ultimately will help, I think, move the dial at scale. So.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Yeah, the stable policy and regulatory environment is really key. I think we continue to see what I would say polarization around sustainability, what it's making to the market, in the sense of the perception, and I would say the perception of certainty where sustainability and climate transition focus may go. So I think having a like clear direction that it's here to stay and everyone needs to work towards it, I think it would help massively. And Emily, what are your thoughts?
So I was going to say the same thing, but particularly as it relates to the pension system. So for pensions to be able to make these long-term investments, that stable framework is so important, because they have a fiduciary responsibility to the pension system. And so to be able to make long-term investment, they also need to know that stability is there. So policymakers and governments, and it's already fragmented by country and by industry. So there's already the fragmentation there, but it really needs to be at that top level to provide some framework which enables for real sustainable change.
Thanks, Emily. And another question I had was, so do you have a role model in sustainability field? Who is this person, if you would like to share, and why do you find them inspirational? Maybe Emily, starting from you.
So Maria Teresa Zappia, who is both the head of impact at Schroders Capital and then deputy CEO at Blue Orchard, she's just been a joy to work with. It's feel like seeing a woman who is both energetic, fun, smart, fierce, all of the things. We just need, I think, more of those role models in our industry, but that then also is having, a wonderful time while she's doing it. And so that kind of energy is infectious. And then also what I hope to bring to my team and to other women in the industry, that we can be smart, have fun, and be awesome at what we do. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. It's a both and.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Amelia?
I'd say an obvious role model would be someone like Sir David Attenborough, who has been the ultimate educator on all things beautiful in our world, and has single-handedly raised the issue and raised awareness on the issues around plastic pollution. So, but I also kind of want to call out the nameless sort of scientific researchers around the world who are little by little sort of building our global understanding of the world. So like, for example, how phytoplanktons consume significant amounts of carbon dioxide from our oceans, right? I mean, without this sort of basic foundational understanding of how our world operates, it's very hard for us to do anything about it. And then, of course, also searching for the solutions to help us, to help the world transition away from some of our addictions to like fossil fuels and things like that. And I think, to me, I think we need to give more credit to these sort of nameless scientific sort of researchers who are really sort of building on our understanding of the world.
Perfect. I cannot agree more, Amelia. That's just so true. I think having a strong foundation is everything, because again, in the world of uncertainties, in the world of, again, polarization and sustainability, to be able to have to be able to go back and to the fundamental evidence, I use it as a support, is really critical these days. So absolutely. And so as we are moving closer to the end of our episode, I was wondering if you would like to ask some questions to the future guests to our podcast series. So I don't know, Amelia, maybe you have a couple of questions.
I have one, and I thought really hard about this one.
Okay.
This is the thing I spent most time on today, thinking about.
It's one but mighty, okay.
Yeah. So I would like to ask future participants if they are optimistic or worried about where the world is headed in respect to sustainability, and what drivers are contributing to their feelings about our direction of travel.
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Amelia. And Emily?
So I wanted to ask the future participants what any tips that they might have when talking to people that might not believe in sustainability, or when, you know, within an organization or a client that can come across as just, you know, a hard no. Just because I think dialogue is so important in that's what drives everything. And so how do you open up those conversations to have more fruitful outcomes?
That's a wonderful question as well, Emily. Very topical, and I think we will have to continue to look for ways how we engage with clients, stakeholders, trying to bring them on board. Because I think being on board is like being truly on board is what is going to make a difference. Okay, so we are at the end of our episode. A huge thank you, Amelia and Emily, for sharing your insights with us today. It was really exciting to learn about your personal journeys, ambitions, and motivations. Thank you to everyone for listening to our 4th episode of the Women in Sustainability podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you stay tuned for future episodes released on our channel. We'll continue to explore inspiring stories from amazing women working in sustainability. I really hope to see you again next time.